And as we look at him there and we look at his suffering and we realize that he didn't suffer on his own account because he was innocent, but he suffered there for you and for me, that is the picture of what our sin must look like to God. The old rugged cross. It's not just a scene in a drama or a symbol that we use, but it's the place where the Son of God died. A horrible death for the ugliness of our sin. A few more things. We have in verse 19, Pilate had a notice prepared and fastened to the cross. It read, Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. Many of the Jews read this sign, for the place where Jesus was crucified was near the city, and the sign was written in Aramaic and Latin and Greek. And the chief priests of the Jews protested to Pilate, do not write King of the Jews, but that this man claimed to be the King of the Jews. Notice the word claimed there. And Pilate answered, what I have written, I have written. Now, I don't intend to go into a long and drawn-out explanation of this, but pretty simply, it's amazing that God took this guy Pilate. And remember when Jesus had this conversation with him? I actually preached that message as well, about him being a king and what type of king he was and where his kingdom was from. Notice that the idea of king stuck in Pilate's mind. And when it came time for the crucifixion of Jesus, it was very common for them to basically have a small piece of wood, sometimes that they wore around their neck as they were paraded through the streets carrying their cross. And then that sign was taken and attached. That sign basically had the person's name and the crime for which they were accused written on it, and was oftentimes nailed to the top piece above the head. In Jesus' case, it's exactly what took place. Only the words on there came from very high up, came from Pilate, as he ordered the soldiers to put that on the sign. Placed on a hill, and placed on a sign where all could see. The crucifixion was done in public, probably in a visible place. That's why some believe on a hill. And it's written in 3 languages so that everybody could understand. Pilgrims coming into the city was written in Greek, the ordinary language of the day that Alexander brought to the whole known world. It was written so that the Jews could read it, and so that everyone could see and understand who this person was. And notice what Pilate put on it. He put on it the truth, didn't he? And so in this way, this man who had sent Jesus to his death at the behest of the Jews ends up recording for us and making a public testimony of who Jesus is as he's dying there on the cross for all to see, that he was the King of the Jews. And in this, act, he intends to aggravate the Jewish leaders, right? And they're so mad, they go back to him, and they're like, hey, what's this whole King of the Jews thing, man? I want you to change that. He claimed to be the King of the Jews. And Pilate's like, hey, forget it, pal. I conceded to you enough here. You're not getting another inch from me. What I have written, I have written. Can you see the irony here of how God stands behind this story? And exactly what Pilate wrote was the truth, that Jesus was the King of the Jews. And by Pilate's own wicked hand, there he is, writing the testimony for all to see who would come to Jerusalem and would place their faith in him. Pretty astounding turn of events. You can see how God is in control of the details. Verse 23, and when the soldiers crucified Jesus, they took his clothes, dividing him into 4 shares, one for each of them, with the undergarment remaining. And this garment was seamless, woven in one piece from top to bottom. Let's not tear it, they said to one another. Let us decide by lot who will get it. And this happened that the scriptures might be fulfilled, which said, they divided my garments among them and cast lots for my clothing. People have wondered, what were the 4 parts of the clothing that were divided, and how did they do this? Well, basically, there were a number of different pieces of clothing that a person would have. They would have a headcloth. They would have probably footwear, sandals. They would have a robe. That's an outer robe. And then they would have a belt. 4 pieces of clothing. They divided the garments of Jesus, each soldier getting one of those. Now, I say, well, why were they so interested in them? Because in those days, clothes were expensive. The average person, had only one set of clothes. Some of you might think that's true of me, because I wear them so many days in a row. I do actually have more than one set of clothes. I just like ones better than others. You know that comfortable thing you have? But in Bible times, man, clothes were very expensive. And so these were worth money. And the soldiers got all the possessions of the crucified person. So whatever he had on his person, whatever he was carrying with him, the soldiers got. And so they divided those 4 pieces of clothes up amongst them. But there was a bonus prize in Jesus' case. The bonus prize was the beautiful undergarment, the tunic that was worn next to the skin. Full-length piece, most likely. And the Bible tells us that it was unique, that it was woven in one piece from top to bottom. Extraordinary quality. This was like the top of the line. I'm not even going to embarrass myself by trying to make some kind of popular clothing line reference because I would just fall on my face. My clothing line consists of Kmart and Walmart. But this garment was amazing. It was beautiful. And it was expensive. And so this, they couldn't give to any one person. They had to gamble for it. They had to draw lots for it. And so they did. And whoever won that was getting a very, very, very expensive item. And so one lucky guy took it home. And so again, there they divide, the garments up of Jesus, and so they fulfill the prophecy given there in Psalm 22:18. This was so that the scripture might be fulfilled. It said, they divided my garments among them and cast lots for my clothing. By the way, no one is forcing those soldiers to do that. They did what they chose to do. They chose to divide up those garments because they were worth money. Yet all along, God had predicted that these events would happen. In John's presentation of these crucifixion details, he's presenting them in such a way that God is ordaining this all the way through. That Jesus is not just simply this poor, pathetic victim, but he is following God's will to the very last moment. In verse 25, we have some additional information. And near the cross of Jesus stood his mother, his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. And when Jesus saw his mother there, and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to his mother, "Dear woman, here is your son." And to the disciple, "Here is your mother." And from that time on, this disciple took her into his home. Now, the disciple mentioned here is almost without doubt John. Remember that John, again, does not mention himself in his own book. But there's another interesting thing here. Think about how amazing this is that Jesus is on the cross. He is being crucified. He has suffered immensely. He is near to death. And still, his thoughts are not simply on himself. Most people believe that Joseph had died prior to Jesus' ministry. I believe that's correct. Joseph, remember, was a very important person, although he didn't have any position at the time that Christ was born. If the Romans would not have been in power, do you know who Joseph, Jesus' father, would have been? The king of all Israel. Do you guys realize that? And so when Jesus begins his public ministry, I think it's important that his father already be out of the picture. I believe that his father died prior to his beginning his 3.5-year ministry. And at this point in time here, only thing is left is his mother. And as the oldest son, Jesus was responsible for his mother. And the neat thing is that when they actually look up some of the papyrus of the time of Christ's crucifixion, they see in history, in archaeology, that what Jesus is making here is he's making a statement of adoption. Very common to the way adoption proceedings would have been and have been recorded for us. And so as the oldest son, Jesus is setting his affairs in order. He is giving the care of his mother, the one who loved him with such tender heart, who believed in him from the outset, believed everything the angel told to her. And there she is at the foot of the cross. There she is right there with Jesus and John. And Jesus looks down and says to John, "Take care of my mother. From this time on, she's your responsibility. You care for her because I'm going to be unable